Welcome to Chapter 10 of Motor Development and Skill Learning. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. Development of cardiorespiratory endurance. Cardio endurance in children, worldwide trend is toward reduced fitness. We see that people are more and more sedentary. This doesn't only include adults, but children as well. High percentage of children in Western societies have risk factors for heart disease. Again, it seems to be getting more prevalent and at younger ages as we see more and more children being sedentary. The school systems are not enforcing as much movement as they used to, as well as at home. Kids don't spend as much time outside going and doing things that are exercise in behavior. And so we are seeing these trends more and more. Cardiorespiratory endurance reflects the ability to sustain vigorous activity. Many activities demand vigorous exertion, and the cardiorespiratory systems are related to endurance levels. Physiological response to short-term exercise. During brief, intense activity, oxygen reserves and energy sources are depleted. Such activity is termed anaerobic, without oxygen, so you don't need to have oxygen present. Anaerobic power is the rate at which the body can meet demands for short-term intense activity, and anaerobic capacity is the maximum oxygen deficit the body can tolerate. As exercise period lengthens, anaerobic system contributes less and the aerobic system will take over. So what are some anaerobic activities? Lifting weights, short sprints, jumping, all those are anaerobic activities. Developmental changes in anaerobic performance. Anaerobic performance is related to the following: body size. Again, as you do more anaerobic stuff, if you're burning more calories than anything, you can lose body fat. Again, anaerobic performance, especially lifting weights and some power movements, will increase muscle size. Ability to metabolize fuel sources in the muscles, such as phosphocreatine, carbohydrates, quick mobilization of oxygen delivery systems. And some of these factors change with growth. Children have smaller output of absolute anaerobic power. Children have less anaerobic power output than adults, right? Again, a lot of factors that go into that. Size, hormones, muscle size, development of the neurosystems, and everything. Like a fully grown adult has fully grown developed systems versus children. Muscle mass is smaller, again, undeveloped hormones, depending on how old they are, so on and so forth, production systems, and absolute quantities of energy reserves are smaller. Developmental changes in anaerobic performance with growth. Energy reserves increase, muscle mass will increase, tolerance of byproducts of metabolic processes improve. This where we see things such as your lactic threshold get better, and mean and peak anaerobic power will improve. Gender differences reflect muscle mass differences. Improved neuromuscular coordination contributes to improved performance of anaerobic activities, and more mature children have better anaerobic performance. So again, depending on how old they are, where they are, you'll see gender differences, so on and so forth. And the more mature children have better anaerobic performance, so on and so forth. Implications for children's programs. What are the implications of the link between maturation and anaerobic performance by physical education teachers? Again, they should all be performing these things, and the more complex tasks need to be done by children who can follow rules better and adhere, to good safety guidelines. But yeah, and again, youth sports. Same thing, all kids can do all these different, anaerobic movements, and it's going to help improve their sports performance. Anaerobic training in youth. With training, children, adolescents of both sexes have higher peak power and mean power. When children stop training, peak and mean power will decrease, right? Use it or lose it. Anaerobic performance in adulthood. Once adult body size is attained, anaerobic performance is stable. Improvement reflects training alone. So it has nothing to do with growth and the changes in the body as you're growing and maturing. In older adults, the loss of muscle mass and type 2 muscle fibers can result in declining anaerobic performance. Gender differences. Men maintain their advantage over women in anaerobic performance. Men and women decline sharply after age 70, but women decline significantly faster than men. Anaerobic performance, any tasks that take 10 to 30 seconds long, typically total work. Output is measured. Possible field tests include 50-yard or 50-meter dash, sprinting, flight of stairs. You could do vertical jumps, so on and so forth. Anaerobic training in adulthood. Sedentary older men undertake high intense endurance training. Intensity endurance training improved in work output on anaerobic capacity tests. Masters athletes who undergo anaerobic or resistance training improve anaerobic performance, and resistance training is valuable. Again, lift your weights, kids, adults, older adults. Prolonged exercise. During prolonged periods of activity, following responses occur: oxidative breakdown of food stores, depletion of local energy reserves. Aerobic power is the rate at which long-term oxygen demand is met. Anaerobic capacity is the total energy available for prolonged activity. Physiological response to prolonged exercise: the body will increase heart and respiratory rates, cardiac output, oxygen uptake to deliver oxygen to the muscles, as well as other nutrients. Cardiac output can increase through increased heart rate or increased stroke volume. So how fast your heart beats and how much blood it can pump per stroke. Peak oxygen uptake is defined as the highest rate of oxygen that can be consumed by the muscles during aerobic work. A limiting factor to continued vigorous activities is the heart's ability to pump enough blood to meet the oxygen needs of the working muscles. Peak oxygen uptake, it is strongly related to lean body mass. Absolute peak oxygen uptake increases linearly through childhood and adolescence. And max oxygen uptake per kilogram of body weight is then stable in boys and declines slightly in girls. Changes in aerobic performance during childhood. Children have smaller stroke volume, thus smaller cardiac output, right? Small hearts can't pump as much as big hearts. Children compensate in part with higher heart rates though. Children have lower concentrations of hemoglobin, the blood protein that carries oxygen. So again, another rate limiting factor. And children have an efficient system but cannot exercise for as long as adults can. With growth and maturation, following will occur. Their heart size will increase, hemoglobin concentrations will increase, and oxygen extraction ability decreases to adult levels. Ability to sustain exercise is related to body size and maturity level, and by late adolescence and into adulthood, trained men have an advantage over trained women. That is one concept sometimes people get confused, that maybe men are more anaerobically built and women are more aerobically built. And again, it goes more to exercise trends versus absolute training and performance. And what I mean by that is, yes, culturally, at least for a long time, and it's actually changed quite a bit dramatically over the years. Men would spend more time doing anaerobic type training versus women who would spend more time doing aerobic type training. So if you looked on average of performance, yeah, you would see in those groups that yes, the men would be stronger anaerobically, women would be stronger aerobically, but when training is equal, yes, men will perform greater anaerobically in general and greater aerobically in general as well. Again, this shows boys and girls as they age in their max VO2. And you'll see that the boys have a much higher VO2 output as they reach adulthood and as they continue in adulthood. And again, in body, even when you compare body weight, you'll see a greater increase in girls over boys too, which boys tend to have higher body weights. So again, the thing that's interesting though is if you look at younger ages, they're a little bit more equal. And again, that's because when hormones and everything else haven't quite set in, boys and girls, as long as they're training equally, are fairly equal up to the point that they go through puberty. Training effect in children, growth status and maturation level must be considered. Early studies were equivocal. Training intensity is important. Sufficiently intense training improves peak oxygen uptake regardless of age, stage of maturation, or sex. More research on children is needed. Again, it's hard to do research on kids, and it's hard to really push kids like you might do adults in research as well. Aerobic training yields significant improvements after puberty. Aerobic performance in adulthood, average maximal oxygen uptake per kilogram of body weight falls about 1% per year after 20s. Athletic and active adults maintain higher max O2 uptake than do sedentary adults. I think would be a no-brainer, but yeah, no duh. Cardiovascular structure and function. Changes occur in structure and function in adulthood. Loss of cardiac muscle, loss of elasticity in the cardiac muscle, thickening of left ventricle, fibrotic changes in valves, and loss of elasticity in major blood vessels will result in cardiorespiratory decreases. Cardiovascular structure and function. Changes occur in structure and function in adulthood. Max achievable heart rate with exercise declines, stroke volume in some older adults declines, and cardiac output will also decline. That's why we tend to use the age, or we use age in in percentage of like cardio output and stuff when people do exercise prescription, and why age plays a factor. As you get older, your percentages go down when we talk about intensity and things like that. And again, it's not perfect across the board. Some people can hold their cardiovascular functions in a much older age, especially with correct training and stuff, versus others. But there's some truth to it, right? Implications. What middle and older adult lifestyles maintain cardiorespiratory endurance? Well, those that perform cardiorespiratory endurance is a training method, right? What lifestyles are detrimental to cardiorespiratory endurance? Pretty much what 90% of our population does. They do absolutely nothing, therefore their cardiorespiratory endurance falls significantly each and every year. How might school teachers educate children about these effects while they're still young? One, we need to get more phys ed back into schools. That's one of the biggest issues. Phys ed used to be an everyday occurrence for children. Now in some schools, it's, they're lucky if they get it once a week. And again, in doing these things, the structure of the way that they teach, I've noticed as well, is different. We used to teach sports and skill sets, hopefully gaining them some fun games and things to do and learn and to keep them interested. And nowadays there's more on less play, and more making them do push-ups, sit-ups. And again, I think a little bit of that's okay. But when that's the main focus at younger ages, kids are going to hate exercise at younger ages. Therefore, they're going to hate it when they're adults, right? We need to go back to the way, it's one of those, phys ed has actually gone in reverse to what it was doing in the 1980s, which is sad. Assessing aerobic performance. Performance may be graded basically where it gets more intense in stages. If you do like a time to exhaustion test, they'll put you at a constant speed, and each minute the incline on the treadmill will go up. Effort can be maximal or submax. Again, if you really want to know your true VO2 max, you got to do maximal. A submax is going to give you a projection of what they think it is, which again is not very accurate, or not in comparison to doing a max test. You're ballparking it basically. Peak oxygen uptake is often measured to see how efficiently participant uses oxygen. So again, using a metabolic cart with the VO2, with VO2 sensors and masks and all that is going to be your best bet. Can measure highest exercise load tolerated before exhaustion, but this carries risk. Again, you got to be really careful doing these things. I wouldn't do it with folks that are not trained athletes, or at least trained to push themselves, and they know what their upper limit is, and they know how to safely stop when they get there. A 1,600-meter run can be used as a field test for youth. That's why everybody has to do the mile run when you're a kid. Respiratory structure and function. Changes occur with aging. Elasticity of lung tissue will decline. Vital capacity decreases, especially in smokers, and oxygen carbon dioxide exchange will also lose efficiently as you age. Adult training programs. Peak oxygen uptake is higher in those who train. Declines are not as dramatic in trained adults. Even sedentary adults can improve peak oxygen consumption with training, and even in older adults, right? It's never too late to start exercising. Muscle mass increases with training, and training adults have a larger vital capacity. Adults who remain active decline in aerobic endurance only gradually. Sedentary adults who begin training can increase max oxygen uptake and improve blood lipid levels, and improvement is associated with increased muscle mass as well. So don't only do cardio, but do weight training, right? Training programs in adulthood, max oxygen uptake increases, stroke volume increases, max cardiac output increases, and oxygen is better extracted from blood at muscle sites, and ventilation will improve. And this is, and understand this, if you're a highly trained athlete, know this will not happen, because as you age, things are going to move down. But this is looking at adults who either are not in the best shape or have just started training. They will see improvements, right? If you're at the top of your game, I'm sorry, once you start getting older, you start going down, right? You ask Jordan or Kobe or any of those guys that were at the top of their game as they were getting older, right? Again, this shows those that are athletes, active, sedentary, with training, and sedentary, right? So you can see the VO2 max stays much higher in athletes. Again, it stays high, it's not as high, but still higher in active adults. Sedentary with training, so again, it shows the shift that they would have if they were sedentary to sedentary with training. And again, with sedentary, you see it's much lower, right? And the decline is huge between 29 and 30 with the sedentary versus what you see with young athletes and those that are actively trained. Endurance training. What implications do developmental trends and aerobic training effects have for physical education programs? Again, they're not getting kids on the right track, right? And should physical education classes spend substantial time on aerobic exercise? I believe they should, but not in the way that they're doing it now. Right now, they're kind of pushing kids to try to exercise as adults, rather than trying to find fun activities, like get them playing, full field soccer and basketball and things like that have a mix of aerobic and anaerobic, and they have the game component, which keeps their attention and makes it fun, right? Ultimate frisbee, things like that can be all good aerobic activities. Just keep them moving, keep them going, and hopefully they'll have some fun doing it and want to do it. Long-term training effects research is limited, especially longitudinal. It's hard to get people in those studies. And again, as a researcher, nobody wants to do those studies because you will take years and years and years to do it, and without any fruits of your labor, right? Women with more physical education during their youth exercise more frequently in adulthood. So again, that shows we need to do a better job in youth to get people to do it. And youth sports participation predicts young adult activity levels as well. That's what got me. I played sports all growing up. I kind of never wanted to stop training and being an athlete. Salton and Grimsby, max oxygen uptake was measured in 5059, categorized by activity. Subjects were asked about activity in youth. Those engaged in lifelong activity had the highest max oxygen uptake measures, and sedentary adults who had been active in youth had higher measures than those who had been inactive in youth as well. So again, you know, teachers, parents, everybody needs to do a better job getting young kids moving and create a love for it and a desire and a need for it. Effects of disease on endurance performance. Short-term infectious disease reduces working capacity, varying degrees depending on what you got. Those with long-term diseases should never be placed at risk. Parents, educational staff, medical staff should form a team to determine safety levels for those who are going through that, and participants should be monitored closely. So again, cardiorespiratory endurance improves with body growth. Training, especially after puberty, improves endurance. If training is not maintained, benefits will reverse. Use it or lose it principle, and gender differences exist after puberty. Again, males tend to have much higher peaks in both anaerobic and aerobic. All right, any questions, you guys just let me know, and we will do chapter 11 next.